The Slop Awards are in. We have the nominees for a gaming award show. We have a pretty good idea of what game journos are going to try and promote this year. And all of it, aside from the Nintendo game, are complete slop. It is embarrassing looking at this. Like the nominations for the Golden Joystick Ultimate Game of the Year are, what the hell is this? The Golden Joystick Ultimate Game of the Year. Like, it couldn't just be Game of the Year award. Like, no, it has to be like the Golden Ultimate Game of the Year. Like, it's just like, what? But anyway, the nominations for the Golden Joystick Ultimate Game of the Year are in. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Already forgotten. Nobody cares about it. It's woke. Nobody remembers it. Nobody talks about it. Coming to Switch 2 next year. Will not be playing it. Ghost of Your Toy. Absolute slop by Sucker Punch. PlayStation exclusive. Completely undermined by the original game. It has already been forgotten. It is also woke, by the way. Hollow Knight Silk Song. One of the most overrated games ever produced. Within a couple of weeks, it was completely forgotten. Most people have not finished it. It is the golden example of just how it isn't really possible for indie developers to put out a game of the year contender, especially when it's a direct sequel to an already successful indie game. It is a very interesting case study, but yeah, Hollow Knight Silk Song is slop. And I did beat it, by the way. I did beat Lost Lays, so don't give me this bullshit that I got filtered by it. It wasn't good. Blueprints. Never heard of it. No one cares. Death Stranding 2 on the Death Stranding. Like, why was this even nominated? Like, nobody even knew this game was coming out. Like, no, nobody even knew this game was getting a sequel. And we're supposed to give it a Game of the Year award because Hideo Kojima's name is attached to it. Please. Like, this game is being outdone by Metal Gear Solid 3 a year after, like 20 years after it first came out. Like, now obviously MGS3 Delta is a complete failure in its own right, right? It only sold like 1 million copies, but like that's about as well as the brand new Death Stranding 2 did. And like this is the thing that I have a problem with is that like we're supposed to believe that Hideo Kojima's work is going to remain relevant even after leaving the Metal Gear IP, even though that pretty clearly is not the case. The instant Kojima dies or retires, his entire company is just going to collapse. There's just going to be no momentum behind Kojima Productions or whatever he's doing. It's complete slop and really needs to be denounced as complete slop. Like Kojima is a complete joke and should be thought of as a complete joke. Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Um, a complete train wreck, a budget game that's hyped up by casual players of RPGs, people who don't play more than one RPG a year or a generation, more likely. Like this is the most astroturf game in recent memory. This is something that people put up on a pedestal and hyped up as being just as good as Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger when it's not even going to be remembered by next year. And honestly, I've said this before, but I do believe Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is an industry plant. I don't believe this thing's success or popularity was organic. I think it's a complete train wreck and should be thought of as such. I do think this game has absolutely no momentum behind it at all and should be condemned as just a golden example of just how the gaming industry tries to rally behind some random Western produced game to try and make it game of the year and undermine all of the far superior Japanese games that come out. Let's see, Silent Hill F, complete slop. Feminist propaganda, the worst Silent Hill ever produced, at least by like a Japanese company. Actually, no, I think they outsourced it to a Chinese studio. Actually, I don't know if that's accurate. I haven't looked too much into Silent Hill F because I knew it wasn't going to do well. But like a lot of people really seem to be shilling it and pushing this idea that it's like some deep, complex story when the final boss is a literal wedding dress. Okay, like again, this is like paper thin feminism like rhetoric, like this idea that feminism is oppressive and getting married is a bad thing. It's like it really needs to stop. This isn't horror. This is embarrassing. Like, it really does need to get called out more often, and I hope that Silent Hill F's failure yeah, the F stands for failure. I hope the failure of this really leads to more people start addressing, like, the bias that the industry has towards Silent Hill and these kinds of stories, because this is just embarrassing and really should be denounced as just, like, one of the cringiest things Silent Hill has ever done. Okay, Hades 2. The original Hades and Supergiant Games are legit, real talk, one of my most hated studios ever. I hate how people cocksuck them. I hate how people think they're like some god tier developers, that they're amazing and they put out nothing but bangers. Like they've never done anything good. Like Transistor was bad. Uh, that other game they did was bad. And like now, for some reason, at like for the past couple of years, like Hades 2 has been this like hotly anticipated thing from this studio. You always get this like applause from the game journal crowd whenever it gets announced. And I really have to wonder why. Like I never have understood like the obsession people have with this woke like Greek mythology knockoff that doesn't respect the history or the characters and just it is just not all that fun to play. And I have played Hades. I played it on Game Pass, and I can tell you that there's nothing really there. It's just something that's all hype and no real substance. And like making a direct sequel like this, it really is like the Silk Song thing, where this was super overhyped. This is something that like like the creators really thought was going to resonate with people and be a big deal, and now it's just kind of forgotten. Like this is Celeste here, honestly. It's the same kind of rhetoric where like, well, this is the greatest platformer ever made because trannies. Like it needs to stop. It's embarrassing, and it's just a very good indication of everything wrong with video games. Split Fiction. I I didn't even remember it came out this year. I don't talk about it. Like it is the cringiest thing I've ever seen. Like, oh, I'm a writer. You're a writer. Let's go. Let's explore each other's traumas. It's like it's the most transparent, like self-relating thing ever. Like I think writers writing about other writers should be banned because they're always just self-insert characters. They're always just like these Mary Sue protagonists who understand society and the world better than everyone else. It's something that like I think is super cringy, and that is my mindset when looking at this game, is that like what I look at this and I just see writers writing about writers, and it's just nope. And then that's not even going into like, what I thought of like It Takes Two and how that was like it was presented as this indie project when actually it was like funded by EA, and like it's just you're seeing a lot of this lately. And I would say Clair Obscur is another example of this where major companies like back these smaller projects and then try to pass them off as indie, and then they get all these awards for being indie even though they're like super corporate. Like Baldur's Gate 3 was like that too, by the way. But yeah, we're seeing this more and more often where like people are getting sick of like the established gaming franchises. So the industry is trying to sell you on shit like this, and it thankfully isn't working. And I hope that more people start calling this out for what it is. Okay, Peak. I have never heard of it. I imagine it's just there to pad out space and make the list look longer than it really is. Because look at this, like all these games in this list, not a single one of them is good. Not a single one is relevant or competitive at all with what Nintendo is doing. Yeah, and Peak I've never even heard of, so that just goes to show you how irrelevant this is. Okay, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Okay, I did not like Bonanza. I thought it wasn't as good as DK64. I thought it was kind of underwhelming. I thought it had like its mechanics were very well thought out, but it didn't have the level design didn't really complement it, and like it just didn't feel as good as Donkey Kong 64 to me. that was kind of my opinion on it. I thought it was too like rooted. It's weird because it's such an experimental game, and yet like it feels like it wasn't willing to get away from the series roots. Like I really think they should have put more effort in creating a new villain as opposed to just using K. Rool again. Like I do think that, but there's plenty of things I don't like about Bonanza, but especially after the excellent DLC, I've really turned around on it as being one of the best games of the year. Like I personally didn't like it all that much, but in the at the end of the day, I still put like 60 hours into it, and I'm still gonna go back and put some more time into it. Uh, because of the Emerald Rush DLC and the statues and like it's just a really well made, engaging game. I personally didn't like it as much as most other Donkey Kong games, but there's no denying that it's better than everything else on this list. It's not going to be my game of the year, but like it definitely deserves it compared to like everything else on this here. Okay, so Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Okay, so Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is really interesting because this was, I would say, the biggest bait and switch of the generation, right? This is something that people really hyped up the original Kingdom Come Deliverance as being this like based anti-woke historical fiction thing, and that wasn't really true. But Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 went full mask off with it and started being this thing where it's like they started pandering to game journos, they started pandering to like anti-white rhetoric, they started like enabling like they had like some feminist like black guy from across the world who had no business being there. It's just like you see this all the time in woke products. And thankfully, it seems that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has been completely forgotten and won't really be addressed or brought up again. But like again, I really do think that this is like the gold standard in like why never to trust Western studios, because the studio behind it, Warhorse, they spent a lot of time building up this reputation as being this like extremely based anti woke studio that like hated black people and like would never pander to the woke mob, and then they do in like the most glorious way possible. It is embarrassing looking back on it, how people tried to show the original Kingdom Come Deliverance as this all-time classic. And what's equally embarrassing is how many game journos, when the original came out, how many of them like refused to cover it, refused to talk about it at all, and then turned around and like throw the sequel onto a game of the year list. Like, and again, that is equally as disgusting and ridiculous and should be called out. Like, I'm tired of people evaluating games based on like their bizarre political ideologies, right? If Kingdom Come Deliverance was that good, whether you buy it or not shouldn't matter on whether it agrees with your political takes. That's kind of my view on it at this point. Is that like if Kingdom Come Deliverance was good, you wouldn't need the developers like, I don't know, pandering to your views on Twitter to get any kind of positive attention behind it. It is embarrassing that this farce went on as long as it did, but thankfully plenty of people have called this game out for what it is. And although game journals gave it perfect scores and called it like some masterpiece, it's going to get buried. And that's the interesting thing about this, is that like everything on this list is going to get buried. Like Expedition 33 is going to win. Like I think it's that's pretty safe to say at this point. It is going to win, but when it does, it's going to be forgotten almost immediately, and everything else that was nominated is going to be seen as a loser. And that'll be fine for like Donkey Kong Bonanza, because that game's already like got on to be an all-time classic and a really popular game. But for most of these games, like they're going to immediately fall into obscurity. Like it's kind of crazy. Like Silk Song was so bad that I no longer think of myself as a Hollow Knight fan. And I was a pretty big fan initially. I love the first game, but Silk Song was such a disaster that like I've kind of turned in my fan card, and now I don't want to see anything from Team Cherry ever again. Like Silk Song just was a complete disaster. It's I've lost all my faith in Team Cherry. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing a lot of going forward, is that they're going to keep putting out these sloppish sequels, Silent Hill F, Hades 2, Split Fiction, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Hollow Knight, Ghost of Toy. They're going to keep putting out these sequels, and like people are going to either like
buy the original because they've never played it before, or play it and immediately realize it's not as good as the first game, and then like not come back for the sequel. Like that's becoming more and more common. Back in the day, people would come back for sequels no matter how bad they got, but because there were no other options. But these days, you have like an entire huge backlog of classic Nintendo games to play, like that most people will never ever be able to play through it all. So there's no reason to care about like these game of the year contenders. Is kind of my take. Indiana Jones. Oh, you can just play Tomb Raider. Ghost of your Toy. You can just play Zelda or any of the superior alternatives. Hollow Knight. Play Metroid. Death Stranding, play Metal Gear Solid, Expedition 33, just play any JRPG ever. Silent Hill F, just play Fatal Frame. Hades 2, just play Zelda. Like Donkey Kong Bonanza, just play Donkey Kong. Like there are so many high quality Nintendo games out there. There's no reason to care about any of this unless you genuinely believe that these are like your favorite things ever and that like third parties are like better than Nintendo. If you believe that, you're wrong. But the reality is there are like dozens of Nintendo games that came out this year that are better than all of this. Like it is just crazy to see just how out of touch the Game of the Year awards actually are.